All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 3 o'clock. The Indiana Pacers took a 2-1 series lead in the finals last night from Indianapolis. The Pacers were +7 in points off turnovers. They had 11 blocked shots after the game. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander talked about the defeat.
Yeah, they were aggressive. They were higher on the pick and rolls. They really were just, like Coach said, more aggressive, more forceful. Yeah, we gotta, starts with me, but we gotta apply that pressure back.
Game 4 is coming up tomorrow from Gamebridge Fieldhouse in Indy. Tip-off at 5:30 on ABC. The Thunder right now set as a 5.5-point favorite. Turning our attention now to the U.S. Open from Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania. Round number 1, J.J. Spawn is your leader at 4 under par. There's a group of golfers, one shot back at 3 under. Sam Burns and Cameron Young are 2 shots off the pace at 2 under par. All right, what's going on, my friends? Chad Doing here, Rip City Drive. Big props to Brian Wilson, a life well lived, who passed away at the age of 82. He, of course, is the mastermind behind one of the great albums of all time, Pet Sounds. He composed it. I always know how great a musician is based on how other musicians talk about the individual. And there's a lot of greats who adore Brian Wilson and the work that he did with the Beach Boys. He's a musical genius. So we'll listen to some Beach Boys music today. If you want to reach out and jump on board, as you know, I'm a man of the people, so I'm here to help you. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Anything you want to talk about is fine by me. If you want to reach out to me on social media, you'll find me there at Chad in Rip City. You can text me direct at 360-281-5473. Yes, that's my personal number, and you're welcome to hit me up. What do I care? And then, of course, you can always podcast the show or listen on our free iHeartRadio app. And we're on YouTube as well. So if you want to see the show from the inside out, inside the studio, go to youtube.com and pull up Rip City Radio 620. And we stream all of our local shows live when we are on air. So that's what we have going on here at the station. Coming up on the show today, Travis Demers is going to join me here in about 20 minutes. A lot of things to talk about with him, including the NBA Finals. I want to get his take on the Oregon State Beavers, who will kick off their College World Series experience tomorrow against Louisville. I think he may have some insight on Louisville, knows the gentleman who was calling the games on television for the Cardinal. We're going to be joined by Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider from Rose Garden Report. I want to talk to him about some potential rumors that could impact the Trailblazers. Draft is now just under 2 weeks away. Sean Highkin in studio during the 4 o'clock hour. And then the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, will stop by at 5:20. I want to talk to Kerry about the Beavs and get his take on this improbable run for Mitch Canham and company after being dropped, having no conference, having to put together a schedule as an independent, and now they're going back to the World Series. So Kerry Agers will join us at 5:20. By the way, I appreciate your time. Beautiful day, loving the weather right now. A little bit cooler today. I'm a little more sensitive to temperature now that I'm getting older. In my old age, I get cold real easy, and the heat makes me melt down, and I get grumpy. So days like today are spectacular, awesome, and I feel good. Had a great chiropractic adjustment today. He hit all the spots, and it was orgasmic. So I feel really good. Looking forward to the show today. I want to start with the NBA Finals. Game 3 last night. What a performance by the Indiana Pacers. After really looking unsettled and uncomfortable in the first 2 games due to the pressure that the Oklahoma City Thunder were able to create with their defense, The Pacers turned the tables and put the pressure on Oklahoma City last night with their pace, with their length, with their defense. And I love Rick Carlisle, great coach, underrated coach. And he's a guy that's had great success throughout the course of his career. He was an assistant at one time here in Portland. He was an assistant with the Pacers under Larry Bird. Rick Carlisle's got a lot of experience, but he's done a heck of a job of really kind of, buffing out this group to where now they're playing their best basketball of the year. They've gotten better bit by bit, quarter by quarter throughout the course of the NBA season, and now they're playing their best ball. And I, always a mark of a good coach, you guys know this, is when you see guys respond to the coach. When you get guys to buy in on both ends and play with as much effort as possible, good things are going to happen. And we see that even with Tyrese Halliburton. He's not a spectacular athlete. He's not an overwhelming, dominant defender like Lou Dort, but he's giving you maximum effort. And what I like about this Pacers roster is it's a group of guys, no superstars and no household names, but it's a group of very good basketball players who are playing together, and they're playing really hard. And it's amazing in sport, isn't it? How if you just play really hard and you play together, good things always seem to happen. And I thought the Pacers last night, especially in that fourth quarter when they outscored the Thunder by 14 and took control of the game, I thought they were at their very best. And they had good balance, good bench scoring, better shooting. But what was impressive to me was, their defense. Through the first two games, the story was turnovers. The Thunder were forcing turnovers at an alarming rate and putting the Pacers behind the eight ball. But last night, the Pacers, with their defense and their pressure, feeding off the energy of the crowd, they were able to really get things going. 11 blocked shots last night for the Pacers. They were +7 in blocked shots, and the Pacers, for the game, forced 19 Thunder turnovers, leading to 21 points. They were +7 in points off turnovers, and that's really your game right there. The Pacers just did a good job of playing good defense, staying connected, playing really hard, and then they were able to generate some easy offense and some buckets. And then they had great contributions across the board. Solid game once again from Pascal Siakam, who was efficient on 8 of 14 shooting. He scored 21 points, 6 boards, 4 assists. They got 22 points on 9 of 17 shooting, including 4 of 8 from downtown from Tyrese Halliburton. He had 9 rebounds, 11 assists. Very effective game for Tyrese, his best game of the series thus far. And they got 27 points off the bench from Ben Mathurin. And what I like about Mathurin is, one, he's, a darn good basketball player, but he looked real comfortable last night. He was getting to his spots. And when you watch him play, he's like the one guy that I have confidence in on the floor for the Pacers when he's in there who can create shots for himself. But I thought Mathurin was solid. And their pressure and the way they continued to fight throughout the course of the game, it paid off. And I would say for the Thunder, I don't doubt how good of a team they are. But let me ask you this. What was the one question mark entering the postseason about the Thunder? It's their youth. Their inexperience, right? Young team. They haven't been there. They haven't done that. So would their lack of experience cost them? And I think what we saw last night from the Thunder was the guys, and they had a bunch of them at home in Oklahoma City who were contributing. Well, when you move to the road and you're facing a hostile environment, those guys didn't perform as well. And this is going to be the case for both teams. The Pacers didn't get much from their bench. They didn't shoot the ball well through the first 2 games, but they come back home and you get those role players in front of a home crowd where they're comfortable, and all of a sudden you got guys, making a big contribution, especially Ben Mathurin. We saw T.J. McConnell electrifying the crowd with his defense and, some timely plays, some very heady basketball plays. And then I thought the Pacers, with their pace and the way they were attacking last night, it paid off because in the fourth quarter, the Pacers looked fresh and the Thunder looked tired. They looked like an exhausted basketball team. But that was a good team effort. Now, this sets up a game tomorrow, and we hear this phrase all the time in sports, right? It's a pivotal game 5. It's a pivotal game 4. Well, tomorrow's game 4, in my mind, is the poster child for pivotal game in a basketball series. I believe whoever wins the game tomorrow is going to win the championship. And it's very simple. We talked about it. Young teams, They play really well at home, especially the role players, but on the road, not so much. I do not believe that the Pacers can win another road game in Oklahoma City. And I doubt that Oklahoma City, with their inexperience, can win a game 6 in Indiana. So it's very simple. Tomorrow's the key game. It's the pivotal game in the series. If the Pacers win and take a 3-1 series lead, I think they're going to win the championship. If the Thunder bounce back like they've done throughout this playoff run, we saw it against Denver when they were down 2-1. They won game 4, won the series in 7. I believe that if the Thunder win tomorrow and even up the series at 2, they're going to win the NBA championship in 7 games. So tomorrow's game is huge. It's epic. And I do believe that that's going to be the pivotal game in the series. And I'm pulling for the Pacers. I like their story. I like the way they play together. And I'm a big fan of Rick Carlisle. But I don't think they can win another game in Oklahoma City. So props to the Pacers for being in a position 2 wins away from the championship. And it's funny because no one thought they should be here. No one predicted the Pacers to get here. But they just don't listen. They don't care. No one got the message to the Pacers that they don't belong here because they continue to play well, and they're putting themselves in a position to win the championship. And it feels a lot like the Dallas-Miami series from, a little over 10 years ago when Miami had just formed the super team with Bosh, Wade, and LeBron, and they took on Dallas. And it was the first year that the Big Three were together, and they got beat by Dallas. And guess who was coaching that team? Rick Carlisle. So once again, the Pacers in a great spot right now, but they've got to take care of business tomorrow. And after the game, there were a bunch of different people who had a chance to talk. And here's Rick Carlisle talking about the importance of making life difficult for SGA.
We have to look at the fouls. Maybe there's some that are avoidable. But look, with him, he's the MVP. You just gotta try to make it difficult. We just got to keep platooning people onto him and try to keep our guys fresh somehow.
Exactly. You're not going to shut him down. It reminds me of series of the past when you're taking on Kobe or MJ or LeBron. What you're going to do, you're not going to shut them down completely, but you want to try and make it as uncomfortable for them as possible. Make them work so hard that maybe come fourth quarter, some of the shots that they were making early in the game start to come up a little bit short because of the fatigue factor, right? That's what it's all about. Now, I mentioned the team effort and how so many different guys contributed in that game last night. Rick Carlisle says that's the way they need to play.
TJ just brought a competitive will to the game. You know, Mathurin jumped in there and immediately was aggressive and got the ball in the basket. And, you know, look, this is the kind of team that we are. We need everybody to be ready. It's not always going to be exactly the same guys that are stepping up with scoring and stuff like that. But, you know, this is how we got to do it. And we got to do it as a team, and you know, we got to make it as hard as possible on them.
No question. How about that dunk by Obi Toppin in the fourth?
Now drives forward with the left hand, floating to the glass. No, but Y-E-S! As Toppin pulled it off the front of the rim and flushed it with 2 hands.
All right, Rip City Drive, Chad Doing here. When we come back, the voice of your Portland Trailblazers, Travis Demers, will join. We're going to take on the NBA Finals. We'll talk about the pivotal Game 4 coming up tomorrow, and the Oregon State Beavers' improbable run to the College World Series. Travis Demers is up next. I'll be joined in studio in the 4 o'clock hour by Sean Heiken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. And then the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, is going to join me at 5:20, and we'll get his take on the Beavs' run to the College World Series. Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620, Rip City Radio.
shifting strategy in their hunt for Travis.
The Pacers attempting to go up 2-1 and now officially are up 2-1 as time has run out. Boy, Oklahoma City had the lead in the fourth quarter, but as is their custom, the Pacers rallied and were able to finish this one off 116 to 107.
All right, what a pleasure. I love having my buddy on the show, the voice of your Portland Trailblazers, Travis Demers, who is back with us. Travis, my man, thanks for the time.
Chad, thank you for thinking of me. I missed you, buddy. And can I hijack your show for like 15 seconds?
You can do whatever you want, my friend.
So we had a little chat earlier today, and I forgot to ask you. This is not relevant to anything, but did you get the video I sent you yesterday of Lincoln?
I did, yes. I freaking loved it. Dude.
He was screaming 88 miles per hour, and what the heck is a gigawatt all afternoon yesterday. It was amazing.
Well, that's good parenting right there, because I know that Back to the Future is one of your favorite movies all time. It's one of my favorites, and
Yes.
It's such a classic. But the fact that he has gravitated towards some of the things that you like, that's going to be a lot of fun for you guys moving forward. And he's also a big Michael Jordan fan, too, which is sweet.
He is. So he's getting there. He's getting all the important food groups down.
So many things to talk about. I want to start with the Pacers. You know what amazes me about them, Trav, is that they got off to a slow start this year, but quarter by quarter throughout the course of the season, they've gotten better and better, especially on both ends of the floor. And now they're peaking at the right time. What are your thoughts on the job that Rick Carlisle has done with that group that doesn't have any real superstar power, but it's just a complete roster with a lot of versatile guys?
You know, it's interesting, Chad, because you played the final call highlight from Mark Boyle from last night's game a minute ago. And I listened from maybe the 4-minute mark in the fourth quarter on through, the start of the post-game show. And Mark Boyle's a fantastic broadcaster. And then after the game, Pat Boylan, who's their sideline reporter and also the TV voice of the Indiana Fever, was interviewing T.J. McConnell, and they were coming off of a Game 2 loss, and they're going into Game 3, and they win Game 3. And he said it has been 94 days, so that would put, early March, since the Pacers have lost back-to-back games.
Wow.
That's remarkable during the season, but you extend that into the playoffs, and they dispatched the Bucks in 5 games. They beat the Cavaliers in a short series when nobody thought they were going to win that series. They beat the Knicks in 6 games. And then they're heavy underdogs against the Thunder. And they were, I don't know if it was last night or Game 2, but they were 11-point dogs in one of those games.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've got a 2-1 series lead with basically home court advantage. What they have done and the way that players have been able to get the most out of what they do. And you think about, Turner last night did not have a great game, but he came up with big plays. He had 5 blocks in that game. He had a big block down on the perimeter late in that game last night. Mathurin and T.J. McConnell were 2 of the most important players in the game last night. So, yes, it has absolutely been, Tyrese Halliburton making clutch plays and big plays. But everybody on that team has done their job. And to get that kind of buy-in and execution, yes, it's on the players. But Rick Carlisle continues to show that he is an elite coach and a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, no question. I think maybe we found, the Thunder's kryptonite last night, because it's popped up a couple of times throughout the course of their playoff run to the finals. They're a great team, and their point differential was historic, the best ever in the history of the league. They won 68 games, so we know how dominant they are, but they're a young team, and like we've seen with a lot of teams, young players, especially the role players, on the road, not the same type of guys they are at home, and I feel like both these teams are similar, where they really seem to feed off the energy from the crowd like young players do, and, the Oklahoma City Thunder have had issues at times on the road through this playoff run where the younger guys, the role players, aren't as impactful in certain moments when they're away from home.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you look at the role players last night, a couple of guys that I just mentioned, the role players last night for Indiana were phenomenal. But, to another point that you're saying about being young and what you said about having the largest point differential in NBA history, they didn't play a lot of close games. They were blowing everybody out. And I'm not saying they can't win close games, because they did, and they have won close games in this postseason. but they haven't had to do it a lot. So when you have a team in Indiana that has won a ton of close games and big-time clutch situations, not that Oklahoma City can't be clutch, but one of the things that has made them so elite is they get out in front, and once they get out in front, they're not looking back. Winning close games and coming from behind is not their strong suit.
You know, what's interesting, I've been hearing a lot of people who are taking in the NBA Finals, covering the Finals. They're going to Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the first time, and they're talking about how great the arena is. You've been telling me now for the last couple of years it's like one of the best in the NBA.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite arenas in the building. Yeah, they have done some upgrades to it because I don't know how old it is. I think it opened in like '99 or something like that. But it's a beautiful arena. I mean, it's basketball, right? It's Indiana. It's basketball.
Yeah.
There's a museum out on the concourse around the entire building. And one of the special things about that arena is it's not a multi-purpose arena. Most arenas are designed and built to play hockey or other sports, but because Gainbridge Fieldhouse is only for basketball, all of those seats behind the basket and on the sidelines that in most places are movable, they're fixed. So the sight lines and the feel of it, it feels like basketball. It's awesome.
I really think tomorrow's game, Game 4, is the pivotal game in this series. Like, if the Pacers win, I think they'll win the championship. If the Thunder win, I think they'll win the championship. Do you see it that way with Game 4 being of the utmost importance for both sides?
I do, because if the Thunder win tomorrow night, now they've got a little bit of momentum back on their side, and it's a 3-game series with 2 of those games being in Oklahoma City.
Yep.
And that is a big task for anybody to win in that situation against this Thunder team. If the Pacers win, I think that casts some doubt into Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And now they have to win 3 games in a row, which, like I mentioned, the Pacers haven't lost 2 games in a row in over 3 months on a team that is hot, on a team that is super confident right now. I'm with you. And I know it's easy to say, well, yeah, of course, if a team goes up 3-1, they're probably going to win the series. But I think this year it's especially true in this series.
All right, we'll get back to basketball in just a moment. I've been dying to talk to you about baseball because you understand the game so well. The Oregon State Beavers, somehow, some way, did not have any losses through the portal that were of consequence. So they're able to keep their guys. They were kicked out of their conference. They pieced together a schedule with an inordinate number of road games as an independent. Yeah. And now they're getting back to the College World Series under Mitch Canham. I mean, how improbable is this run to get back to Omaha for this group after everything they've been through?
Well, I think it is and it isn't. It is because of all of the things that you just mentioned, and it's really difficult in today's day and age to keep a program in any sport together when there are a lot of things working against you. Not being in a conference is working against you. I think it works out better in baseball than it does in other sports because if you're good, you're going to get in. And once you get into the tournament, if you've got all of those things working, and sometimes it just is a matter of being hot, you can have a lot of success. I mean, look at a team like Murray State, right? I think somebody said their stadium holds like 900 people, and they're going to Omaha.
Yeah,
it's the first time since 1957 that you have 8 new teams, not a single team returning from the prior year. But for Oregon State to do what they've done, obviously they have built a national power in baseball. And I thought Roxy Bernstein made a great point in the broadcast over the weekend that, against Florida State, who's been to the College World Series as much as anybody, you have a blue blood and a new power. And that's exactly what it was. So to be able to keep all of those things together and find ways to win on the road and just come up with big hit after big hit after big hit. I mean, they didn't hit a single home run in games 1 or 2 against Florida State, but found a way to put the pressure on and win game 1. They lost game 1 in the regional, won 4 straight, which it's an incredibly rare thing to see. All of this stuff coming together, I'm not saying they're a team of destiny, but this is a really special year for Oregon State.
We're talking to Travis Demers, the voice of your Portland Trailblazers. What's the name of your friend that called the games on TV for Louisville?
Mike Farron. He's a host on MLB Network Radio. He used to work for the Diamondbacks, and he had the TV call of the Miami-Louisville series.
Now, have you talked to him? in regard to the upcoming matchup tomorrow with Louisville and Oregon State. I'm just curious what he thinks about the matchup.
Yeah, very very briefly, because he's been traveling and has a lot of other things. But basically, he thinks it's a very even series, or a very even game in that opener on Friday, and that Oregon State's got as good of a chance as anybody to come out of that bracket and reach the final.
All right, I wanted to ask you about this too. I think maybe it was when they were matched up against St. Mary's. We saw the Beavers really struggle with the changeup, the off-speed stuff. How much different is it from high school to college in terms of the stuff the pitchers have, the off-speed stuff, and how difficult is that adjustment for the hitters to be able to learn how to read and pick up on that stuff?
Well, it's big, and you think about this. In the movie Bull Durham, when Crash Davis is on the bus and he's talking to the young guys in the team. They're like, "Wait a minute, you've been to the show," and the big takeaway there, and it's true, is that the breaking stuff, because a lot of those guys throw heat, especially in this day and age. Guys can throw 90, 95 plus with a flat fastball, but the breaking stuff is such a massive change from minor leagues to the major leagues, from college to the minor leagues. And then from high school to college baseball, there's a big change there. And it can be tough. The other thing, too, though, Chad, is that when you're going from playing a schedule where you're playing the same teams consistently and you have scouting reports and time to look at this stuff, you're playing brand new teams once you get to the postseason. I don't know if they played St. Mary's this year. They might have. I would think they probably did. But you're essentially playing and facing pitchers that you've never seen before every single night. So it was an advantage, I think, for Oregon State in that those last two games of the regional to play USC 2 games because they were in the same conference last year. And when they were playing programs that they haven't seen before, even if the pitchers aren't great pitchers, it takes a time or two through the lineup to get adjusted to a new arm. And that's why sometimes you see a guy making his major league debut his first time through a lineup, just crush it, and then in the 4th or 5th inning, everything starts to fall apart because there's no book on those guys. And it can be really difficult to adjust to a pitcher that you've never seen before. The advantage in that situation is clearly on the pitcher.
All right, one more baseball question for you. I saw where I think it was the day before yesterday, a couple of days ago, Shohei Ohtani went through another simulated game where he's ramping up, his arm, and he's getting his he faced some minor league batters, so his pitching, he's looking pretty good. And, Dave Roberts said that he could be in the rotation sometime maybe a little bit before the All-Star break. When you have a player that's so valuable to a franchise and his bat is so good and you invest so much money in him, where do you stand when it comes to, what the Dodgers should do with Ohtani? Would you let him pitch, or would you prefer that he just focus on being a DH and hitting home runs?
Well, I think it's situational, right? Because are the Dodgers okay in their lineup without Shohei Ohtani? Yeah. Are they? I know they've struggled a bit at times. I say that they're still, one of the best teams in baseball. But do they need Shohei Ohtani to have a great lineup? No. Do they need Shohei Ohtani to have a dominant pitching staff if everyone is doing their job? No. So while you are taking away from his hitting when he's throwing every 5th day, he's capable of it. And he is an MVP-level hitter, and he's a Cy Young-level pitcher. So when you have that guy that can do all of that, I think it's really difficult not to give him the opportunity to do that. And they have such depth, too, that, every 5th day, if he's not in the lineup, I think you're okay.
All right. Travis Demers, voice of the Portland Trailblazers here on the Rip City Drive. Coming up on the 25th of June over at Moda Center. It's the NBA Draft, and we got a Blazers Block Party Draft Edition. And we're going to be broadcasting live from the Block Party. You can also stop by and enter for your chance to win a Trailblazers prize pack, which includes the Coors Light silver seats for a game, an autographed Scoot Henderson jersey, and a signed Trailblazers pennant. And we're going to be on air covering the draft from 3 all the way up until the end of the draft and Joe Cronin's press conference. And Travis Demers is going to be a major part of that. So with the draft coming up, Trav, where are you at now with just under 2 weeks away from the draft? What are you most excited about or intrigued about with all the different things that could happen around the league?
You know, Chad, you and I have been covering this league and this team for a long time, right? And we always have at least some kind of idea of what the Blazers are going to do. You know, last year, they had hoped Donovan Clingan was going to be available. Fortunately, he was, but if he wasn't, there were a couple of other guys here and there. You know, there were a lot of the mock drafts in recent years have had the same players or, a combination of maybe 2 or 3 guys over 15 mock drafts. A couple of years ago, we knew that it was either going to be Scoot or Brandon Miller. The Hornets were going to make that decision for the Blazers. I have absolutely no idea what the Blazers are going to do with the number 11 pick. And a lot of the things that I'm reading say that, between, let's just say, 6 or 7 and 15, it's pretty even in terms of what players are going to be available. It is a deep draft. And I have never been so unsure about what direction that they were going to go. The bigger rumors out there right now are trades. Is this guy going to get traded? Is that guy going to get traded? Did it come from a reputable source? Usually the answer is no. I would expect them to make a trade or 2 or 3 this offseason. Will it come on draft day like it did last year? Maybe. But I just like anybody else that is not dialed in and scouting these guys and inside the war rooms, I have no idea what they're going to do. And to me, that's incredibly intriguing.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, by the way, whose birthday is tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Is it tomorrow or is
tomorrow.
it? Oh, no. June 24th, right? Is it the 25th or 26th?
26th.
Okay. Lawson.
Is Lawson's birthday.
Okay.
He's going to be 5 years old already.
That's freaking awesome, man. I can't believe how fast your boys are growing, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, Lincoln just turned 7 back on May 12th, and Lawson will be 5 on June 26th, man. It's nuts.
Gosh, it's so good. Well, buddy, I appreciate you taking time to join the show. It's great to catch up with you. Enjoy the rest of the finals. Look forward to the NBA draft, and it's going to be fun to see what the Beavers can do in Omaha.
Yeah, I'm really excited, looking forward to that. And you and I are going to spend a little time together this summer on and off the air.
Yes.
And I'm looking
You
forward
got
to
free
that too,
time
man.
now. The boys are out of school. We can get together. Yes.
Yes.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks.
All right, Chad. Thanks, man.
There you go. Travis Demers, voice of the Trailblazers here on the Rip City Drive. Sean Hiking going to join me in studio coming up here at 4 o'clock. And then the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, at 5:20. You can reach out, 503-248-0620. Michael Shacker is here. And it's going to be pretty sweet. The Blazers Block Party Draft Edition, June 25th over at the Rose Quarter campus. We're going to be on air 3 until the end of the draft and Joe Cronin's press conference. You can stop by and enter for your chance to win the Coors Light Silver Seats for an upcoming game this season, autographed Scoot jersey, and a autographed Trailblazers pennant. So a nice little prize pack for you. I told you, I'm a man of the people. That's what I'm supposed to do. All right, we'll keep things rolling. 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, as I mentioned before, you can put Sting on the list of guys I would like to be for a day. And I think he was doing a concert over in Germany, and he paid tribute to the great Brian Wilson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. Just a great songwriter and composer, and did so much great work for the Beach Boys. He's a musical legend, respected by so many. But Sting paid tribute to him at his show over in Germany. Take a listen to this. Yeah, there's Sting. Got to love that. I think Sting is now 73 years old. I think he's 73. And I was just talking with a guy here in the building yesterday that just saw him in concert recently. And they're looking at him and the way he looks up on stage. And they're like, how old's dad? Like 74. And they're like, can you imagine dad getting up there and doing that and looking like that? Yeah, Sting's awesome. But cool to see Sting pay tribute to the great Brian Wilson. Rip City Drive, I'm going to be joined by our Trailblazer insider, Sean Hike, and he'll be in studio coming up here at 4 o'clock. And then we'll talk Oregon State's run to the College World Series with the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, coming up at 5:20. You can reach out to me on social at Chad Rip City, or you can call the program at 503-248-0620. A couple other things I wanted you to hear in regard to the NBA Finals coming off of Game 3 last night. The Pacers were able to get the win. They took a 2-1 series lead, and they did it with much better offense, great supporting cast, 11 block shots, and they were +7 in points off turnovers. They forced 19 turnovers. They turned the tables on the Thunder. The Pacers looked out of sorts through the first two games because of the Thunder's pressure, but last night the Pacers able to return the favor with their length, their aggressiveness, and then their pace, which has gotten everyone, the Cavs, the Knicks, you name it. And you could see the Thunder showing fatigue in the fourth quarter. And Shea Gill just talked about some of the things that they need to do and get right moving forward. Yeah. I think I mentioned this before Game 3 that I thought aggressiveness. The key to the game was going to be who would be the aggressor from the opening tip, because when you're the aggressor and you really start to attack and not settle, it puts you in a position to get the benefit of the doubt from the officials. You can start to take control of the game. The Pacers were the aggressor in Game 3, and it paid off, and that's something that Shea Gill just noticed about the game last night. Yeah, it's true. But what I noticed is that the young players, the role players, we see this all the time, especially in the playoffs. Guys on the road not as comfortable, and therefore they don't get to their spots. They don't make as many shots. They just don't make as much of an impact. And yet last night the Pacers had their role guys, multiple guys. T.J. McConnell was very impactful. Ben Mathurin with 27 points. He was getting to his spots. He was making the most of his opportunities. He can create for himself. He looked great. And the defense was relentless. And again, credit to Rick Carlisle. Mark Daigneault and Rick Carlisle, two coaches in the finals, the one thing they have in common is that their players play really hard for them. And they've gotten their guys to commit to both ends of the floor. And when you get that, when you get guys to play really hard, maximum effort, and commit to both ends of the floor, good things are going to happen. But tomorrow, I really believe this. It's the pivotal game, right? Game 4. Whoever wins that game is, I believe, going to win the series. And I'll be pulling for the Pacers. Look, I still lean Thunder. Like, if you ask me who I think is going to win the series, I think the Thunder will find a way to scratch out a win tomorrow. But I'm hoping the Pacers can take care of business and then put the Thunder in a very difficult spot. I would really like to see a Game 6 at Gamebridge Fieldhouse where the Pacers have a chance to win and take the championship. I would like to see how they would handle the pressure in that situation. I would like to see how the Thunder would handle the situation. And keep this in mind, this is the pressure of what's going on here. We always look at teams and we think, well, they'll get back. They'll be back there again. You got to remember in sports, we talk about this all the time, there's no guarantees. None. Zero. So you might get to the championship, and if you don't win it, there's no guarantee you're going to get back. And the Thunder are going to be faced with decisions they're going to have to make about the roster moving forward because they're going to have guys coming up that will be eligible for, big-time extensions, supermax extensions. So the roster may not look the same. You may not have the same group of guys potentially. The Pacers are in a unique spot because they're young. They've got a good roster, and they play in a conference that looks and appears to be wide open going into next year. But for the Thunder, as good as they are in 68 wins, you need to capitalize on the opportunity right now because there's no guarantee you're going to get back. It looks like the Thunder are going to be back, but we thought the same thing about Denver. And now they look like a team that's just really good but not capable of winning a championship. And that's just the reality of sport. That's what I love about the pressure here, real pressure. And the Pacers are doing it without real superstar power. Like the Thunder have the MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's awesome. And the Pacers, they have a group of guys who are just really good and committed and long and athletic. They have length. And that length, man, when you play length over the course of a 7-game series, it causes issues. They disturb the passing lanes. They get the ball. They can reach in and knock the ball away. It's just something that creeps up on you. And the totality of that over the course of a full series, it becomes a problem. And you got to deal with it constantly. But that's the type of guys they have out there. And Rick Carlisle, props to him too, because a lot of coaches struggle with this, but he's shown confidence throughout the course of the season to play a bunch of guys, just like Mark Daigneault. And then when you turn to them in the postseason because they're used to playing, they can make a contribution. Steve Kerr was real good at that early on with the Warriors, committing to playing a variety of different guys throughout the course of the regular season. And then when you have to turn to them in the postseason, you got depth. All right, when we come back, we'll give you an update, and then I'll be joined by our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, Sean Hyken. We'll get his take on the NBA Finals. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about some Trailblazer rumors. And you can reach out 503-248-0620. Find me on social at Chad and Rip City. This is the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 4 o'clock. We'll start with the NBA Finals. The Pacers took a 2-1 series lead last night in the NBA Finals. Indy was +7 in points off turnovers, and they had 11 blocked shots. After the game, the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, talked about what they need to do. All right, the pivotal Game 4 coming up tomorrow from Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 5:30 tip on ABC, and right now the Thunder have been set as a 5.5-point favorite. Coming up on the Rip City Drive, we'll talk about the Oregon State Beavers run to Omaha with the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, at 5:20. Sean Hiken going to join me in studio coming up in just a couple of moments. U.S. Open Round 1 at Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania. J.J. Spawn, your leader, at 4 under par. All right, I'm really starting to look forward to my in-studio time with Sean Hiken, who's with me, and we're just a little less than 2 weeks away from the draft. It's great to see you, my friend, but I want to start with this because I'm starting to get excited based on what we're seeing right now in the NBA Finals. You and I were just talking about this. What fascinates me about the Pacers is that they don't have a superstar player on their team. They don't have the MVP. They don't have an MJ. They don't have a Kobe. They just have a roster littered with a lot of versatile, good basketball players. But this gives me hope for the Portland Trailblazers, and I want you to tell me if I'm crazy or not, because all the talk has been about whether or not Portland's got a true number one on their roster. We think that they probably don't, and they might be in search of one. But I'm looking at the Pacers, and I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe you don't have to have a true, legit number one superstar. Maybe you just go out and put together the best roster you can with a lot of two-way players who are long and athletic, and you can go out there and compete.
Well, I mean, that's been a talking point really for the whole playoffs for this run, and also for, earlier on in the playoffs. I know they lost earlier in they lost in the first round, but the Rockets being a 2 seed that also doesn't really have a quote unquote superstar.
Yeah.
What I would say is that the Pacers have 2 guys in Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam who are, I would say quite a bit better than anybody on the Blazers roster today.
Yeah.
As of right now. So even though, like, if you want to, I don't know what the cutoff for who gets considered a superstar in terms of, like, are there only 5 or 6 of those guys in the league, then sure, fine. By that definition, like, Tyrese Halliburton isn't one. But, like, him and Siakam both are, like, multiple-time All-Stars, all NBA. In Siakam's case, he was the second best player on a team that won the title 6 years ago in Toronto. So it's not like a situation where it's like none of these guys have ever proven anything, or, none of these guys have ever won at a high level before. And they, and they're, up 2-1 on the Oklahoma City Thunder team that won 68 games. I think, yes, technically, like, no, they don't have a Jokic or a Giannis or a whoever, but I think, this team is, the Blazers are pretty far away from, having the type of talent that they have, even if you don't consider any of them a superstar.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But the Pacers are proof that you can put together a roster. There are many different ways to put together a winner.
Right. And the Pacers never tanked. They never really, did the thing where they're like, we're going to be bad for multiple years, and we're going to get, we're going to just a bunch of high draft picks and hope that it works out like some other teams did. And, the two years that they have been, in the top 10 in the lottery during this run, the 2 players they drafted in 22, they drafted Benedict Mathurin, who was huge last night for them.
He was terrific.
He was, off the bench. What do you have? 27 points off the bench.
27 points.
And so he's been great for them. But he's been kind of through his first 3 years in the league, he's been kind of up and down. He's not like this is a surefire building block. He had that huge game. And then their other top 10 pick they had was Jarris Walker, who's been injured and hasn't played during most of this playoff run. He got hurt earlier in the playoffs, and he just hasn't played in the finals. It probably isn't going to play in the finals. So they're most talented guys, One of them is Halliburton, who they got in kind of a similar trade to the way that the Thunder got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, where they identified, a young guy who maybe under most circumstances a team wouldn't trade, but they were able to get him. And then they were able to trade for Pascal Siakam, who, they didn't give up a ton for Siakam. They gave up, it was like Bruce Brown for the money, and then it was like 2 first-round picks. It wasn't, one of these crazy hauls of like, they didn't even give up as much for him as the Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges, who's never been an all-star. So they were they caught some breaks with, being able to get that kind of top end, all NBA level talent externally to be able to put it over the top. But yeah, Chad, to your point, you look at some of these other guys that have been huge during this run. Andrew Nembhard, who was a second-round pick, he's been awesome for them. Aaron Nesmith, who was kind of never really played that much for Boston. They got him in the Malcolm Brogdon trade. He's been a really important role player for them. TJ McConnell, who kind of bounced around a few different teams as a backup guard during his career. He made some huge defensive plays yesterday. So, they've put together a good, they can go like 1 through 10 deep in the playoffs, and they don't have any bad players that are getting minutes in these finals games.
Yeah, I think we both talked about the Pacers going into the postseason. We knew they'd be a tough matchup just based on the way they play with their pace. Like, they put pressure on you, and we saw that last night with the Thunder, looking a little bit fatigued in the fourth. I think Rick Carlisle's a really good coach. He's underrated, but you made a good point. I'd forgotten about this. We cover the games, so you forget as time moves on how long it's been. But, when he had that run with Dallas, it was almost 15 years ago. Like, that's a long time. So people forget because you're out of sight, out of mind. But yet Rick Carlisle is still here getting the job done.
Yeah, 2011, and then, the next basically 7-8 years, the end of the Dirk era, they kind of didn't really do anything. And then the first few years of Luka, him and Carlisle never really meshed, and then they, just as Luka was starting to ascend, they replaced him with Jason Kidd, and so Carlisle goes to Indiana, which they're a team that was always, again, they never tanked and never like bottomed out, but so they were always just kind of like solid and a tough team to play in the playoffs, but never really a real contender. So people just don't really think about Carlisle. The thing that's impressive about him is the way that this Indiana team plays is totally different from the way any of his teams in Dallas played.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's a credit to Carlisle that he's not one of these coaches that just has this, like, this is my system. I'm going to run my system. I don't care who I have. I'm just going to run. I'm going to play the way I play. I know what the right way to play is. He sees the personnel that he has and is like, okay, this is how we're going to play. If these are the players we have, this is how we're going to play to accentuate their strengths.
I agree. We see it with great football coaches all the time. Andy Reid has had great success with Patrick Mahomes, but the team has had changes over the course of time based on the personnel. And I always believe a good coach will adapt based on the players that he has. We saw it with Greg Popovich. The last Spurs title was a lot different than the first Spurs title under Popovich based on the players he had. And so when you can change and adapt, adaptability is so important, and Rick Carlisle's got that. So the best part is we got a great finals. I was concerned after the first 2 games because the Pacers looked out of sorts. The series was evened up at 1. But I didn't know what to expect going into Game 3. But after last night, with the Pacers taking the 2-1 series lead, I think the gameplay is going to continue to get better. But at least we know it's going at least 6. So we're going to get an extended series, which is great. And I know that this is not going to go down as one of the best rated finals of all time in terms of total viewers. But it's compelling basketball. I enjoy it.
It's been awesome. This has been,
the whole playoff run.
Honestly, man, even the second game that Oklahoma City won by 20 or whatever, I didn't feel like the Pacers played badly in that series, in that game.
It was just the Thunder
Just
pressure,
the Thunder.
yeah.
That was just like, whatever the example that it's kind of like how the Spurs used to back in like the Duncan Parker Ginobili days, like especially that 2014 run where they were just kind of a machine and you just couldn't do anything against you. You could play pretty well, but they were just going to out execute you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the Thunder did in that game. I didn't think Indy looked bad in that game. Like, I know Halliburton wasn't great in that game, but, I thought overall they didn't play terribly. The Thunder just played a lot better, and so they do have that gear in them. But, I don't know, man. I stopped doubting the Pacers after that Game 1 comeback against the Knicks.
Yeah.
Like, they might do this.
Yeah, and Halliburton, he's going to remember this run forever, but like on an all-time heater in terms of clutch playoff run, like the guy's been nothing but straight cash in the key moments. And that's how people remember you. It's like, what do you do in the postseason? Well, I hit big shots and win games for my teams. Like, what a run he's been on. It's awesome.
it's been incredible. You know, that he hits that shot in the first game to win it at the buzzer. Doesn't have a great game in the second game, and then comes back last night. First game at home, first finals game in Indiana in 25 years, and yeah.
I don't know if you're seeing it. You and I weren't too concerned about the Thunder, their lack of experience or the fact they hadn't been there and done that, because we saw them play throughout the year and thought they were terrific, and they are. But the one thing I am noticing, and this happens with a lot of young teams, even the Pacers, when you get on the road in the postseason, especially the NBA Finals, a lot of times the role players, they don't make the shots like they do at home. They don't look as comfortable. And I thought last night, the Pacers being back at home, they got great contributions from their bench, as you pointed out. And the Thunder role players just weren't as good. It's a different ball game when you go on the road as a young player trying to find your spots and get comfortable and be able to make shots. And the Thunder didn't have it. So I did see some of that youth pop up a little bit last night.
Yeah, and it's not even like the Pacers are a super young team. It's just that, they have guys. Pascal Siakam, like I said, has been deep in the playoffs a bunch of times when he was in Toronto and even to the finals and won a title. Miles Turner's been there for 10 years, and he, the Pacers have been in the playoffs most of those years, so he's, has experience playing in these kinds of things. Whereas, with this Thunder team, it was really only last year that most of these guys, and they're so young, but most of these guys were, getting their play. Like, this was the first time you've ever seen SGA get this far, or Chet Holmgren, who this is only the second year. He's his third year in the league, but it's only the second year he's played because he was injured his whole first year. Like Jalen Williams, all those guys, they don't really have the whoever you want to. And I guess the Pacers don't really have like the old. I guess James Johnson is technically on the team, but he's not playing, so it's not really like a fair thing. But even like again, a guy like Pascal Siakam, who's been to the finals, been to the conference finals a few times, has a lot of experience playing in these environments. The Thunder don't really have anybody like that. And that's not to say that like they aren't going to be able to win the series because of that. The Thunder absolutely could win this series still. But I always thought it was a little bit weird going into this series that people were talking about like, oh, the Pacers have no chance. They'll be lucky to get a couple of games. No, I think this Pacers team is they've shown they can hang with anybody.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I can't wait for the game. That game tomorrow is going to be awesome, Game 4. All right, we're really going to dive into the Blazers coming up next, but I want to ask you this. Over the last, 4 or 5 or 6 days, and we're now just under 2 weeks away from the draft, what is top of mind for you? Like, what have you been thinking about? What have you been, hearing? Like, what's top of mind for you as we approach the draft?
What's top of mind for me is just how quiet it's been compared to other years. Like, I wish I could say I was going to come on here and drop a whole bunch of intel about like, oh, I've heard they like this guy, or this is who I think they're leaning towards drafting, or these are the trade talks they're having. There's really been nothing out there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What does that tell you when it's that quiet? What do your senses tell you about that?
Either that something big is going to happen, or they're just going to stay at 11 and take somebody.
All right, when we come back, more Sean Highkin from Rose Garden Report. He's in studio chilling with me right now. I want to get his take on the assistant coaches that were named to the staff of Coach Billups. Some of the potential rumors. There's some reports out there about the Orlando Magic, who could be looking to make a deal. Would the Blazers make sense in that situation? And just getting ready for the draft. It's pretty awesome, man. We're almost there. And then once the draft, as soon as the draft is over, then, we're real close to the new league year starting where free agency will kick off. All right, Rip City Drive, Sean Highkin in studio. Kerry Eggers at 520 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Sean Hyken in studio. You can read him at rosegardenreport.com. You can follow him on social at Hyken. And he's our Trailblazer insider. Very happy to have him in studio. Let's start with the announcements that were made this week with the assistant coaching staff. Chauncey Billups has got some additions now. Tiago Splitter, former Spur, named as an assistant coach. Patrick St. Andrews named to the staff. Also, Quentin Crawford as an assistant coach. And then player development coach, Laurent Black. So what's your take on the hires?
They seem pretty. There was kind of earlier on in this off season, they let go of a few of their assistants, namely Chris Fleming, who they just brought in last summer, and then Roy Rogers, who'd been with Chauncey from the beginning, and Ryan Gomes, who's been there for a couple of years as a player development guy. And so they had been kind of looking to fill those openings, and I think they wanted to have it done before the draft. So this is kind of right on schedule for that. And as far as the guys that they brought in, Patrick St. Andrews, so he was essentially Taylor Jenkins' lead assistant for the last couple of years in Memphis. He was one of two assistants that survived the shakeup that the Grizzlies had on his staff last summer, but he was let go near the end of this season when Taylor Jenkins was let go, and they had Tomas Isolo replace him. But he'd been with Mike Budenholzer for a number of years before that. He, both in Atlanta and in Milwaukee. I know a couple people who worked for the Bucks when Bud was there, and asked about him and heard good things about his basketball IQ and just kind of his potential as a coach. I had one person tell me he's a future head coach in the NBA, so that seems like a good hire. And I say this all with the caveat that we don't actually know what all these assistant coaches do behind the scenes and kind of what each one brings. This is all just kind of speculative. But Tiago Splitter's a real interesting one to me because he had been, he'd been an assistant coach with the Nets and with the Rockets for a little bit, and Alperen Şengün actually has credited him publicly before with helping him develop into an all-star, which he is now. But last year, Splitter was the head coach of Paris basketball, which was kind of one of the smaller and less high budget clubs in the French league, and they went 23-7 and won the French Cup championship and got promoted into the Euro League, which is the top international between the countries European league, as opposed to Euro Cup, which is the second highest one. So he clearly doesn't suck as a coach. So I don't know. There's no reason not to think that these are good hires. It's just going to be really interesting to see kind of what it means for what they're going to do with the offense, what they're going to, how it's going to change kind of what the principles are that Chauncey is going to be putting in, what these guys are going to bring. We're going to see all of that in time.
I was told by someone that with Fleming and Rogers, it's not that they didn't want to be back in Portland, but I was told that they weren't convinced that the staff was going to be brought back. Like they expected potential change at the end of the year, like most of us did. So they went out and started seeking other work, and they got it. And that's kind of how that went down. But to your point about the assistant coaches and no one really knows exactly what they do, I agree with that. We don't know. It probably varies team to team based on certain assistants, what their roles are, what the coach wants them to do, and what they focus on. But I was listening to Channing Frye last week, and he was talking about his time, in different spots in the NBA with Phoenix, with Cleveland. And he was really talking about the importance of the assistant coaches and how he puts a lot of onus on them because for the teams he's been a part of, he talked about how the assistants, it's their job to communicate certain things to players, or if the head coach is struggling with a particular situation, for them to be able to get up in the coach's ear and communicate. I never thought of it like that, but he was really making it sound like the role of the assistants on staff very important for the team and the head coach.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of times like a lot of guys do a lot of different things, and it's not as simple as it may seem on the surface. Like you look at a guy like Splitter, he's probably I don't know the exact hierarchy of who's technically filling whose spot, but they let Roy Rogers go, who was kind of their de facto big man coach, and he worked a lot with Donovan Clingan. They're bringing in Splitter. Splitter was the starting center on the Spurs title team in 2014. He worked with Şengün in Houston. You must assume, they brought him in to work with Clingan. Not necessarily. He was a head coach in Paris for 1 year, very successful, and He was running, I think, the same offense that Tomas Isolo was running at Paris basketball before him. So, he might be, they might, I don't know this for a fact, they might be bringing him in to revamp the offense, or they might be, I mean, I don't think it's just as simple as, they brought in a guy who played center in the NBA. They must be bringing him in as the big man coach to work with Klingon. Like it's usually a lot more, complicated than kind of what it seems.
That's fascinating. And too, it can come down to the head coach and how much he empowers his assistants. Like Larry Bird, when he took over at Indiana to be head coach, one of the guys he hired was Rick Carlisle to be his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And so he basically said, you're in charge of the offense, and you worry about that. Then he hired Dick Harder to take over the defense, and he put him in charge of the defense. So, like, you do that. I'm going to trust you to do that. Carlisle, you take care of the offense. I'm going to trust you to do that, and I'll deal with the players and be the CEO. In Boston, when Doc Rivers won the title with, with KG and Paul Pierce and that group with Ray Allen,
Tibbs was his defensive guy.
Yeah, and he empowered Tibbs to, you run the defense. You set that up, and he did that, and made a name for himself as a defensive coach. So that's good, though. What's cool now for Chauncey Billups is once you get the extension and you're locked into place, then you have more power and more say in terms of who you want to work with and who you want on your staff, which is cool.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, I know this process has been going on for a while, ever since him and Joe got their extensions done. I didn't see Chauncey at all in Chicago, and I know that as a combine, but I know that he wasn't, at the actual combine, because he was having meetings with, he was doing this process. He was interviewing candidates.
Good.
So this has been a process. And, I'm assuming, obviously I'm sure Joe had input into it, Joe has to sign off on everything because he's the GM. But it sounds like Chauncey was the one that said, okay, I want this, I want this. Like, it doesn't sound like any of these guys were foisted upon the head coach, as happens sometimes.
Yeah, that's cool. And the one advantage of having a coach like Billups, who's so well connected around the league and knows so many people, he's going to have a bigger pool of assistants to choose from, because there are a lot of people he knows really well, he's connected with, and that will want to work with a guy like Chauncey.
Well, not just people want to work with him, but people want to work with him because they like him personally, and he now has at least a few more years of job security.
Yes.
Last year, it was going to be kind of tough to fill.
Yeah, why would I want to come in for a year?
Exactly. Because everybody, a year ago, everybody kind of assumed that Chauncey was going into the last year of his deal. They were going to just run it out and then move on. Why would you, if you're an assistant coaching candidate, you have options. There are also a bunch of other coaching jobs that came open last. Why would you, if you're choosing between taking a job with the Blazers on a weird lame duck year where you don't think the team's going to be very good, versus, going to the Cavs or going to one of these other teams that, has a little bit more potential and a little bit more stability, you're not going to really be able to. And, and I think, again, to his credit, I think, Nate Bjorkgren, I think, has done a really good job in his first year as an assistant. But
I like Nate.
That was, and he's one of the guys that didn't get let go, and he stuck around. And, I heard nothing but good things about him this year. But last year, when they hired him, it was very much because his 1 year as the head coach of the Pacers was kind of a disaster, and he didn't have a job before that. He was a quote unquote coaching consultant for Chauncey the year before, but he wasn't on anybody's staff. So, for Nate, it was kind of a make good job. And so somebody like that's who's going to sign up for a job that could only be a 1 year job, because somebody like that just needs to get on any staff to just show other teams that they're, and in his case, it worked out really well that, they like him, and that went well, and they're keeping him around now that, they are putting together more of a long-term staff. But some of the bigger name guys that you're hearing getting some of these assistant coaching jobs, the Blazers were never going to be in the mix for any of those guys, considering the situation last year. Whereas this year, a guy like Patrick St. Andrews, who's very well regarded as an assistant and has been with Bud for a bunch of years and has been with Memphis and did some, and was, instrumental in, what they did. He probably wouldn't take this job this time last year, but now the job becomes a little bit more attractive because the coach and the GM both have long-term extensions, so there's going to be a little bit more security and a little bit more stability involved. And B, the team won a lot more last year than anybody thought, so it's not like, oh, you're signing up for this team that everybody knows is tanking and everybody knows is going to try, he's going to win 21 games next year, and, you don't know when they're going to be good again. I think what they did the second half of the season and, the messaging that's been put out from the organization since then of, we want to, take the next step forward. We don't want to be in the lottery again. I think that makes the job a little bit more attractive to assistant coaching candidates also.
Yeah, no question. Sean Heiken in studio, our Trailblazer insider. Also, we got to give props to Jonah Hurskey, who was an assistant for Coach Phillips last year. He was named to the Remix as head coach.
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity. You made this point a moment ago. If you're a young coach, getting a chance to take over the G League team and get a full season under your belt of coaching and being in charge of that, it's valuable experience.
Yeah, and I know Jonah quite well, and I think Jonah is very well liked by players and
Everybody.
is a good development guy. I think he's going to do a great job in that role. But for somebody like him, he was kind of low down on the hierarchy of assistants, and it's kind of tough to move up.
Yeah.
And so if you're somebody like him and you want to advance in your career, you need to have some sort of opportunity to show what you can do. And I think getting to be a head coach in the G League, I mean, there are some sacrifices you have to make because G League teams still he's been used to flying on the Blazers charter plane and staying in the 5-star hotels that NBA teams stay in on the road. G League teams fly commercial. They stay in a lot less nice hotels but this is an opportunity for him to really say, okay, this is my team. I am with the Remix saying, I'm going to coach this team. Obviously he's going to be pretty locked in with what Chauncey is doing because from a development standpoint, there has to be some consistency between the NBA and the G League team, but he's going to get to do a little bit of his own stuff and get to actually be like, okay, let me show what I can do as a head coach where I'm the one that's, in charge of things. And, that's going to be good for his career, whether it's in Portland or elsewhere. And, you look around the NBA and, more and more you're seeing coaches kind of come up through that. You look at that final series we were just talking about, Mark Daigneault, the head coach of the Thunder. He was the head coach of their G League team for a couple of years before he got promoted onto Billy Donovan's staff and then eventually got the head coaching job. And, Nick Nurse, back when he was in Toronto, he was the head coach of the Raptors 905 G League team. And then he got the Raptors head coaching job when they let Dwayne Casey go. And, he's been really successful. You're starting more and more to see. I mean, you look at, we were just talking about the Blazers head coach or assistant coaching hires that they just made. One guy that we didn't really bring up was Quentin Crawford, who they hired from the Stockton Kings, who just won the G League championship this past year as a head coach of the Stockton Kings. So now, he got to, he was kind of a lower level, assistant video coordinator, a couple different places, Phoenix, Lakers, a couple of other teams. And then he got this opportunity to be the head coach of a G League team, did really well with that, won the championship. And now he's getting, he was able to parlay that into a better job on the Blazers coaching staff. So that's
he's making the move up.
He's climbing the ladder. Like it's supposed, the G League is supposed to be a stepping stone job. So like if this goes well, like you would hope, and I like Jonah a lot personally, so I don't want to say this out of any hoping that he's not around, but you hope that Jonah is not still here in a couple of years because what you want to happen. And I think what he would want to happen is he does the G League thing for 1 or 2 years. That goes well. And then some other team, or maybe it's the Blazers, putting him back on Chauncey's staff, but in a higher role, saying, hey, this guy, I like what this guy was doing with the Rip City Remix. Let's give him, a more, prestigious assistant coaching job and then maybe eventually a head coaching job.
All right. One thing that Travis Demers had mentioned to me when I had him on earlier was, he's interested to see how many moves are going to be made. Now, you have made the point that, it's been very quiet leading up to this point right now. Do you anticipate an active, draft night into the beginning of free agency? Do you think we're going to have a lot of trades? Like, what's your census tell you on that?
I think it'll be somewhat active. I don't know how much I'm buying this. Like, this is going to be the craziest summer of all time. Like some of that stuff that you're starting to hear. And I think a lot of that is because at this point, I'm not expecting Giannis to actually get traded. Like all indications are that the Bucks are acting like he's not going to get traded. Like you're starting to hear some of the Kevin Durant stuff, go around. The last couple of days, you're starting to hear a little bit more chatter about that. But as far as I do think it is going to be active though on draft night, just because everything is so unsettled. Like we know Cooper Flag is going to go 1, Dylan Harper is going to go 2. After that, all bets are kind of off. There's pretty much from 3 to there's like a tier of guys in 3 to 7 range, and then like the 8 to 18 range is like guys that are all kind of clumped together. And there are some teams that are trying to move up, some teams that are trying to move down. So it's really outside of 1 and 2. There's really not a whole lot of clarity about what any team is thinking or who anybody likes, or which teams are trying to move up, which teams want to stay where they are, which teams are trying to move down.
All right. I'm looking at this tweet from Shams, in regards to Kevin Durant, since you mentioned him. They're sorting through trade options, and the main teams that appear to have interest are Houston, San Antonio, Minnesota, Miami, and New York. Of those teams, which location do you think makes the most sense for Kevin Durant?
Depends on the price, I guess. Like, I don't think it's going to cost like a ton to get Durant because it's going to be a rental and he's 37. But I guess San Antonio, if they don't have to give up a ton.
Yeah.
Actually, no, Houston. I think Houston might be the one.
Yeah.
But I also don't know if Houston wants to. I think they traded for all those Phoenix picks from Brooklyn to try to get Devin Booker eventually. And there's no indications at all that Devin Booker is available or is going to be available. But I don't know how much of that ammo they want to use on 37-year-old Kevin Durant.
All right. That's interesting. And, of course, the Rockets, like a lot of teams, they're probably looking for someone who can bring shot creation to the lineup, right?
Uh-huh.
Because half-court offense was their weakness. We saw it play out that way in the series against the Warriors in the first round. They're young. And having someone that can create for themselves and make shots would be good. Kevin Durant would be there. I'm with you. Like, Kevin Durant's terrific, and he's very adaptable. Like, he can fit in with a lot of different teams. But at this stage in his career, I just don't want to give up too many assets for Kevin Durant. Unless you really believe as a team, like, he's the missing link to get us over the top. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, between, the age and, him coming up in the last year of his contract, and it's like he's going to want an extension, and because he's Kevin Durant, he's going to want the max. But are you going to want to pay a guy, $60-70 million a year, or whatever his max is, going into his age 38 and 39 seasons? I don't know.
All right. Well, last time I talked with you, I just want to give a summary and see if you're still at this, in the same spot. But last time I talked to you, you thought the Trailblazers would be quite comfortable if a deal doesn't materialize. If they're sitting there at 11, that they have players that they would feel more than comfortable taking. So taking a player is definitely a possibility at 11.
Absolutely.
And then you also said that, you thought trades are definitely a possibility for the Blazers, but you do not think that they would do something that would be a net negative. Maybe a net neutral. Definitely they're going to be looking for a net positive, but you did not think they would do something where it would be considered a net negative. Are you still in that spot?
Yeah, I don't by net negative, I'm assuming you mean like I don't think they're going to be giving up picks just to get somebody to take Jeremy Grant's contract.
Exactly.
I don't think that's the kind of
because
thing
that would be a net negative if you attach a pick to Grant just to unload him.
Right. I've said the whole time that they priority one should be trading Jeremy Grant because he just doesn't make sense with, Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara both needing to start and both needing to play a lot and the amount of money he's making. I think they kind of know that should be their priority, but I don't think they're so desperate to do it that they're going to give the 11th pick away to somebody to get a team to take Jeremy Grant. I don't think they're that desperate.
All right. When we come back, I want to ask you about the Kevin O'Connor report where he talked about the Orlando Magic. And the reason why is because anytime the Magic are named, there's obviously the connection with Anthony Simons.
I don't know if you knew this, but he's from there.
Yeah. I haven't heard that before. So I want to ask you about that just to get your take on it. Sean Heiken in studio. He's our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. And don't forget, we got the NBA draft coming up on the 25th. And the Blazers going to have a block party draft style right out there at the Commons area outside Moda Center. And we're going to be on air from 3 all the way up until the end of the draft into Joe Cronin's press conference right here on 620 Rip City Radio, your home of the Portland Trailblazers. All right, Sean Hyken just agreed to join me again next week as we prepare for the draft on Tuesday. So we'll be back in studio. Kevin O'Connor's got a report out in regards to the Magic. He's saying that they could be looking to deal 2 first-round picks and either Cole Anthony or Jonathan Isaac to land a piece that they're looking for. As we've talked about over the last couple of years, the name that keeps popping up in the rumor circles is Anthony Simons because he's from the area. There would be a natural connection there, but also Simons would give the Magic something they desperately need, which is a shot maker, a shot creator.
It is pretty funny to me that every single time the Anthony Simons Orlando thing, it's just like, I mean, yes, it does make some sense as far as like, what he would do for them and, the need that he would fill and kind of the hole that they have on their roster. I think it would make some sense, but it is funny that because he's from that area, that just kind of keeps, it's just like, I forget if it was like Zach Lowe, or I heard like, one of the big national podcasts was talking about like the Blazers trading for Domantas Sabonis, which I don't think is something that they would really be looking to do. But the thing that I heard was, oh, but did you know like his dad played there, and so it would be kind of a full circle. It's always kind of funny how that's a lot of the justification. I'll say this about the Magic, Anthony Simons thing: the pieces that they've kind of been, the stuff you just named, those kind of those picks and Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, that type of stuff. If the Blazers were really interested in doing that trade, they could have had plenty of opportunities to do it already.
Yeah.
Like, that's a trade that's been there for 2 years.
Yeah, and when something is out there for an extended period of time where it's the same team and the same players being mentioned, my thought is it's unlikely to happen because it would have already happened. And I feel the same way.
And also just, I think if there's one thing that we've kind of learned from the last few years of, trade rumors, at least as it relates to the Blazers, is that the stuff that you hear, like all the speculation about and all this talk about and all this chatter about for weeks beforehand doesn't actually happen. And the stuff that does happen, nobody thought they were going to trade Dame to the Bucks the whole summer. It was Miami, maybe
right.
Toronto. And then last year, it did not occur to, we've talked about this before, it did not occur to either of us that Denny Avdia could be available.
No.
Like, I was not a guy, like, you're going through potential trade targets. You spend, the whole offseason doing that. He was not, I just didn't think that Washington would trade him. It was not something that was on my radar. And then that's what ended up happening. The thing that nobody really, knew was coming.
I still don't understand why they traded him. It's amazing to me when you see a player like that, the team's able to acquire and he comes in and he's just dynamite. I'm like, why would you not want that guy?
I kind of understand it because at that point, in the Wizards rebuild, they were just trying to get as many draft picks as possible and just stack assets. And so if one of your young guys who, is a good young player but isn't like a superstar, like a all-star, like a guy that you absolutely have to keep around in that position, can get you 2 first-round picks, you should probably do it.
Yeah.
So if that's what your goal is, if your goal is just to get draft picks and you can get 2 firsts for a good play, a good player like Denny Avdia who hadn't shown a ton in his first 4 years, and a team wants to give you 2 firsts for it, you should probably do it. And obviously, it ended up working out great for the Blazers that he was available and they were able to get him.
All right. So in terms of how you and I see it, not the way the Blazers see it, but the way you and I see it through our eyes, like we agree that. I think you and I agree that we think priority number 1 should be looking to move Jeremy Grant.
Yes.
After Jeremy Grant, I would put Anthony Simons on the list. Would you also put Simons on the list?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd put him to 8 and 3.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are both kind of like, they're both kind of in that zone where like, if you go into next season with those 2 guys on the team, I don't think it's like the end of the world. And I don't think it's like a disaster or like this crazy logjam or anything like that. Like, I think both of those guys can play for the Blazers next year.
How shocked would you be if the Blazers extended Ant and kept him on the roster?
Not that surprised. I don't think it's like, I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world.
So that is a possibility.
I don't think it's not possible.
All right. Because it would surprise me. Like, I would be surprised by that. I mean, I love Ant, and I know that he's well liked within the organization, and he's a heck of a basketball player?
It would depend on the number. I don't know if they're extending him for, what he's making now, which is like 27, $28 million a year. But if there's like kind of a more team friendly thing, then, I don't think that's even if it's like you're extending him to trade him later at a lower number, like I don't think that's the craziest idea in the world.
Well, this is where it's really going to start to get interesting with the new CBA with that second apron. Like even the Thunder, they've got 3 guys who are going to be up for not just extensions but supermax extensions.
Yeah, with the SGA one, because SGA already signed his rookie max, and so now his next one is going to be, especially now that he won MVP, so he's got the escalators in it. So it's like going to be the super max where he's making like $75 million a year. But then they also still have to do the rookie extensions for Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. But the thing that the Thunder situation is kind of unique. They're the one team that I think can really have those 3 guys on those huge extensions because they just have so many draft picks, and Sam Presti has proven himself so good at drafting kind of outside of the top 10. You look at a guy like Cason Wallace, you look at Lou Dort, who was not a lottery pick. Like, they have enough, bites at the apple, and they have enough, scouting acumen that when, let's say a couple years from now they have to pay Isaiah Joe, they can just cycle Isaiah Joe out and plug someone else in with one of those lottery picks. Cason Wallace, they might not be able to pay him, but they have a million other draft picks, so they can just plug someone else in around those 3 guys. So unlike most teams that have, 3 guys making, max money and just no way to build anything around them, the Thunder are in a position where they could have 3 max guys, and they have so many draft picks that they're able to actually have quality depth around those guys.
What do you think about the Knicks without a head coach? And so far, they have struck out on everyone they've reached out to in order to get permission to speak with.
I'm so curious where the leak is coming from. I'm so curious, like, who's behind that. Is it like
it's got to be someone inside the Knicks, right?
Who's mad that like James Dolan is coming in and saying, hey, we need to get a big name instead of letting him do a normal search? That's possible. I don't know. It's really interesting to watch.
All right, good. Sean Highkin, you can read him at rosegardenreport.com. You can follow him on social at Highkin. He'll be back in studio with me on Tuesday during the 5 o'clock hour. All right, brother. Nice work. Enjoy Game 4 tomorrow.
Yes,
we'll
sir.
have a lot to talk about
Absolutely.
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Kerry Agers, the Dean of Portland Sports, going to join me at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? The Oregon State Beavers will begin their College World Series play tomorrow in Omaha against Louisville. First pitch will be at 4, pregame at 3:30, hosted by the great Mike Parker. And you can hear it live on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KX, and on 620 Rip City Radio. Last night, the Pacers take out the Thunder and take a 2-1 series lead. And they did it with defense, forcing 19 turnovers. After the game, the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, giving props to the Pacers. Game 4 is tomorrow at Gamebridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. The Thunder are a 5.5-point favorite. U.S. Open Round 1 at Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania. J.J. Spawn is your leader at 4 under par. Yeah. Little Wing Chun. Nice work, Shacker. I just asked Michael if he has been to the theaters to see Karate Kid Legends. And he's like, no. He's just going to wait for it to come out. And he made a very good point. I never thought I'd reach this point in time in my life, but I'm with Shacker on this. I like going to the theater, but there's so much hassle involved that it is much easier to stay home and just stream things.
Yeah, I used to go to the theater all the time because I wanted to get out of my home. But my home is so awesome now, I never want to leave.
Well, I haven't asked you that. How are you enjoying? You moved last year. You went through the big summer move to get things set up. You moved out on the outskirts a little bit. You're over there in Clackamas. You got more land to work with. How are you enjoying your new setup, your new crib?
Well, everything's great, but the last 4 months I've been living in the garage.
I know, but why?
Full house renovation.
So you guys are going to full-on renovation.
Yeah, every room was getting worked on. We're getting close to the end, but yeah, it's been a weird 4 months.
What's that been on? How difficult has that been on the animals?
A little tough, but I mean, they're comfortable in the shop garage. I mean, it's carpeted, it's warm or cold, depending. I mean, we're able to control the climate because it gets really hot on a hot day and it gets really cold back when it was cold back in March.
That's awesome. All right.
They're looking forward to the house, just like the owners.
But streaming movies and having movies hit and being able to stream right there from your couch, it is awesome.
Yeah, like I almost care about the premiere date for when a movie premieres on streaming on one of the apps, more so than the movie theater. And I'm only saying that I'm taking time on your show because I used to be someone who'd go to the theaters the day these movies came out.
Well, me too. I mean, there were times, there were certain movies where I'm like, I got to go on opening night. Like, I can't wait to see it. I've got to go now. And not only that, but the cost involved. Again, I don't eat the food at the theaters. I'll just take in my own little nutrition bar, whatever I want.
And don't get me wrong, the movie theater business is better than it's ever been with assigned seating. So you can show up, you get your
Why did it
tickets.
take them so long to get to that? How genius is it? Because what used to happen, I remember when the Star Wars movies would come out, that I would go and get tickets, but then you'd have to show up super early and wait in line to make sure that you got a good seat so you weren't stuck in front. And I don't know why I thought when I was little that sitting in front was cool. It's not. It's horrible because you have to look up and your neck hurts. It's brutal. But now you just get your assigned seat and you're dialed in. It's awesome.
Yeah. But unfortunately, what I used to do is I used to buy tickets to PG movies and then sit in on the R movies. That's how I was able to get away with that. And you can't do that anymore with assigned seating.
No, my mom, back in the day when I was younger, like they literally would not let you go in and buy a ticket for, an R-rated movie unless you have permission from your parents. And, of course, I never had permission from my mom because she was like, no, that's inappropriate, Chad. But I would have to try and do the same thing, buy a ticket for one movie and then be very, very sneaky. And there's one night, I think it was when Ace Ventura 2 came out. Yeah, I had to see that on opening night. I went to the theater and I took a date, and it was already sold out. And I was like, oh, no. So I bought I bought tickets for a different movie, and then I took her inside, and we waited in line and got great seats for Ace Ventura. So I had to do some underhanded work to make sure I saw the film.
Awesome. And then someone had to stand to watch it because you took their seats.
Yeah. I didn't feel bad about it, though, unfortunately. But I had to see it, man. I had to see my boy Ace. But I was young, too. You know, when you're young, like the coolest thing that I did with my buddy Dayton, this is when I was living in Colorado. This is when Rocky IV came out. And we went to the mall. It was, what was the name of the mall? They had like Southwest Plaza. That was my favorite mall when I lived in Denver. So we went to the movies at the mall. And my mom dropped us off, and we got tickets for Rocky IV. And keep in mind, this is the first time I had seen it. It was so amazing in young Chad's mind that me and my buddy Dane were like, you know, if we just sit here long enough, the movie will come back on. And it did. So we watched it back-to-back times because it was so great. And, you know, the little things you do when you're young to get over on that you're like, man, I can't believe we did that.
Best part of that story is you didn't have a cell phone for someone to contact you.
Yeah, no cell phone. No answering machine. The parents just drop you off at the mall and hope you don't get kidnapped. And, hey, we'll pick you up later on today. And I realize now what was going on. My mom was just happy to get rid of us, right? Like, okay, I'm tired of having you around. You're a pain in my backside. I'm just going to drop you off at the mall. But she knew I would go because she would give me some quarters. Okay, what else could I want? I get quarters to hit the arcade. And I got a couple of bucks to go check a movie. And back then, a movie ticket was probably like $5, if that. Now it's like, what, 20? It's a little more spendy nowadays to go check a movie.
Yeah, it costs more than buying a physical copy of the movie.
That's true. Well, and of course now you can get digital copies. I buy a lot of movies through, you know, Amazon or whatever. So I got digital copies of things now that I can watch. But I also have access to different websites where you can just get movies for free. Yeah, it's really hard for me to buy something when I know there's somewhere where I can access it, right? I know a lot of sports fans believe that too. I could pay for this service, or I could just find a convenient place to stream it online. There are a lot of people that do that too. All right, Kerry Agers, the dean of Portland sports, will join us coming up at 5:20. As you know, he's knows the Oregon State program very well, but I want to get his take on the Beavs and this run to the College World Series. How improbable is this run? How are they able to get it done with, you know, being booted from the conference? No conference. They go independent. They put together a schedule, and somehow, some way, they get it done. And I want to get his take on the support within the program. You know, the boosters and Oregon State being a baseball school, and you know the work of Mitch Canham. So we'll talk with Kerry Agers. Also, he's still working on his book. I think I forgot it's like a greatest hits book where I think he's going through and he's picking out memorable stories that he wrote and different things he covered throughout the course of his career. And then he's going to put them all in one book so you can read it. It's kind of like a retrospective and take a look at some of the different things he covered throughout the course of his career. So we'll get an update on the book and where he's at in the stages with that. I got to tell you what, what did I say going into the finals before it started? It's like, I just want compelling basketball. I want a story. I want compelling basketball. And we're now going to get a compelling series because it's at least going to go 6 games. And we could very well be in store for a 7-game series. But what the Pacers were able to do last night was change the way that I look at the series. Because after the first 2 games, even though we were tied up at 1, I was concerned that it was going to be a very short series because the Pacers had not played good basketball. Through the first 2 games, the Thunder had dominated basically 7.5 of the 8 quarters that were played. Their defense is smothering. They were making the Pacers uncomfortable, and they were turning the ball over at an alarming rate. You know, uncharacteristic turnovers not being themselves. And they had yet to have a player go for 20 or more in one of the first 2 games. So they were struggling. But last night, the Pacers were able to turn the tables. They're the ones who applied the pressure. they're the ones who, made the Thunder feel them with their length and their pressure and their defense. They forced 19 turnovers and they blocked 11 shots. And then they fed off the energy of the crowd, and they got multiple guys to step up and make plays. Ben Mathurin with 27 points off the bench. T.J. McConnell was a burst of energy, really impacting the game with defense and some timely plays. They had multiple guys who were, really engaged and involved. And it was impressive. Like, I got to give them props. That was a well-played game. And then you got Pascal Siakam, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and a terrific all-around game from Therese Halliburton. 22 points, 11 assists, 9 boards. And they shot the ball well. They looked comfortable. They got the bench production. It was a well-played game. And for the Thunder, we saw it pop up once again. The young guys, they're a young team. They don't have a lot of experience. And a lot of times when you get young players on the road, they hear the noise, they feel the intensity, and all of a sudden the shots they were making at home aren't dropping. And that was a big issue. The bench production last night was massive. The Pacers had 49 points off the bench, led by Ben Mathurin, who had 27 points. The Thunder had a grand total of 18. So bench production was massive. The energy level at which they played with was terrific, and they were hitting them with the classic Indiana pace, and they were protecting the basketball. And we saw it in the game. The Thunder were fatigued. They looked tired. They were gassed. And after the game, Rick Carlisle talked about that balance and what they need and how they need to play. Now, on the other side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander talked about some of the things that the Thunder will need to do moving forward, starting with Game 4 tomorrow. All right, so Game 4 tomorrow, 5:30 tip on ABC. Thunder a 5.5-point favorite. And a reminder of the Blazers Block Party Draft Edition coming up on draft night, June 25th. It's going to be right out there at the Rose Quarter campus. Rip City Radio, we're going to be live on air from 3 all the way up until the end of the draft for the Joe Cronin press conference. And if you stop by to say hi, you can enter to win a Trailblazers prize pack, which includes the Coors Light silver seats, all 4 seats for a Trailblazer game this year. Also a autographed Trailblazers Scoot Henderson jersey and an autographed Blazers pennant. So you come by, say what up, enter for your chance to win the prize pack, and we'll be on air up through the draft for your best Trailblazers coverage in Portland right here on 620 Rip City Radio. When we come back, we'll talk about the Beavers' ridiculous run to Omaha. The Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Eggers, will join me here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, our next guest is a very good friend and someone I have so much respect for. I know him as the Dean of Portland Sports. You can read him on his website at kerryagers.com, and he joins the Rip City Drive once again. Kerry, thank you for your time. It's great to have you back on the show. I was thinking about you the other day. It's so sad that we've had to say goodbye to two greats in Stan Love and Brian Wilson, separated by just a couple of months. And I obviously you knew Stan very well, but did you have a chance to interact or be around Brian at all?
Never met Brian. Met Mike Love, Stan's brother, and of course Mike and Brian were at odds for many years. It's too bad because some of that sound in the '60s and early '70s was some of the greatest music we've ever had.
There's no question. Pet Sounds, which was composed by Brian Wilson, I think is one of the all-time great albums. He was a musical legend. But I was thinking about you when I got the news that Stan had passed away. I remember the night where you were there. I didn't even know I was going to be sitting with you and Stan, but when I showed up at the amphitheater there in Clark County, we were in that little box area, and I had my mom with me, and it turned out to be one of the greatest nights that I remember because you were there, so I had a chance to catch up with you. And then Stan, who I had met and talked to just on a couple of occasions, he was sitting there in the box with us, and he saw how much my mom loved the music, and so throughout the night he was giving the backstory on all the songs, and he was communicating with her. And then after the show, he asked if she'd like to go back and meet the band and took her back there. And I just thought that was a great night. But I love Stan so much for the way he treated my mom. And so I was very sad to see and hear of his passing.
Stan spent 5 years after his NBA career as sort of a attaché for the Beach Boys. His particular job was to make sure Brian Wilson stayed in line. And he had a number of stories about that time. And Brian, of course, was into drugs and alcohol and really, in a bad stage in his life. Stan was responsible for keeping him clean and did a pretty good job. But he said it was a tough 3 to 5 years for him on the road.
Wow. It's Kerry Agers here on the Rip City Drive. Well, the Oregon State Beavers are back in Omaha, and the first time with Mitch Canham as coach. I just wanted your take on this, Kerry, because, it's pretty amazing. If you look back at the last year, they didn't lose anyone of consequence in the portal. They were dropped by their conference. They had to piece together a schedule with a lot of road games based on their independent status. And yet here they are back in the College World Series in Omaha. And what is the key or the secret sauce that allowed them to get that done?
Well, when you think about all the obstacles, the league breaking up, having to set up your own schedule, playing as an independent, playing only 19 home games, 35 of their regular season games were either in a tournament or on the road. If you think about all those things, and maybe it's not a Cinderella story, but I think I saw Mitch Canham after that last Florida State game wearing glass slippers as he left Goss Stadium. It really was an amazing thing. And they had their issues, as you know, during the season. They won a lot of games, but there was a 5-day period where they lost 4 in a row to that arch rival down the road. And it looked to me like, are they even going to make the NCAA tournaments? They got it together and did a pretty good job. And then, of course, they lose their first game in the regional. You're thinking, wow, are they going to get knocked out in the Corvallis regional? And then came back and just hit the heck out of it and won the regional and had to go to a third game in the super regional and got it done with 5 home runs in the final game. So it's been a great story. How have they done it? They have excellent defense. They're strong up the middle, Chad, with Wilson Weber at catcher from Putnam, Ivar Kett and J.D. Singer from at shortstop and second, and then Cole Reeder from Bend in center. They are very good defensively there, and that's been a real key. All those guys can hit. And then Gavin Turley, the school career record holder in homers and RBIs, the left fielder, has just been, very, very good. Their pitching has been pretty good. They've got 2 great starters in this freshman Dax Whitney and Ethan Kleinschmidt. And then when they get past that, hopefully they win at least one of their first 2 games. We'll see if it could be one of anybody. But pitching is going to be a real key in the College World Series.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about because you've been there to see it and how it's been done before. What is the key to teams that win, the College World Series? I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose your first game. You want to keep on track and avoid having to play
Correct.
extra games. But what is the key? Is it just simply good pitching, defense, and timely hitting, or is it something else?
I couldn't put it any, but those are the three things that you would say, yes. And of course, there are some 10-9 slugfests, and you'll see those, but mostly you'll see pretty low scoring games, tight games, and right, important to get timely hitting. You have to have some guys that can get clutch hits for you. I think the Beavers have that. Arquette is one of the great shortstops in the school's history, Chad. At 6'5", he's certainly the tallest. He can hit. He's got power. He's a very smooth defender. Do I think he's as good as Darwin Barney? I'm not sure about that, but he's right in the same conversation.
We're talking with the dean of Portland sports, Kerry Eggers. I'm curious with Pat Casey. Have you talked with him? I'm just wondering how much pleasure he gets from seeing where the program has gone after he stepped down and knowing that he's got his former players who are making it happen.
I have talked to him several times. In fact, last week we talked. I don't think there's anybody he would rather have succeeding him coach at Oregon State than Mitch Canham. Mitch came to him as a kind of a troubled freshman in 2004 and was a key guy in getting that first College World Series team in 2005 and then winning the two championships in 06, 07. Captain of the team, catcher, and as I started to say, he had a troubled background. His mother died when he was, I think, when he was a freshman or maybe a high school senior, and he credits Case with being a father figure that has been very, very important in his life. And I think Case kind of looks at Mitch as sort of a surrogate son almost. But they are very, very close, and I know Mitch's admiration and respect for Case is off the charts.
And so how, obviously with NIL and with, the way money is changing the game, there are certain schools that have a decided advantage, even over schools like Oregon State with the tradition that they have. But are there people within, the program or around the program who really love the fact that the baseball program continues to win and they're getting good support? Like, how do you see the support in Corvallis for the program?
If you're talking about emotional support, it's as high as it could be. I mean, it's the program at Oregon State. I would say women's basketball would be second. But as far as financial support, I don't think so. I know Dwight James wrote on his Substack column last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, that they should really buck up their NIL right now for baseball, and I'm in agreement with that. They should get a higher proportion of the NIL funds than probably any other baseball program in the country, because they bring great publicity for the school. They're a great representative from the athletics department, and I don't know, frankly, how much NIL money to answer your direct question. I know that Kyle Bjornstead, who's in charge of Damnation, has given it as much as he can, and now that the school is able to give some, it'll be interesting to see how much they give, and I hope they're able to continue to keep their players and attract good players.
Hey, Kerry, you've told me before that. Yeah, the College World Series, going to Omaha, it's like one of your favorite events to cover. So kind of break it down for me. What about the event and the setup and the location? What makes it such a great event to cover and be a part of?
Well, first of all, they used to have an old Rosenblatt Stadium, which is sort of like a Wrigley or a Fenway that was a cathedral, but very old. And, while it had great history, I really like the new one. I think it's called Charles Schwab. It was TD Ameritrade the last time I was there. That's a beautiful stadium. But just seeing the best college teams in the country come in, I mean, I tried to go to a few other games and see other programs, and there's such excitement with each of the fan bases, and it was a lot of fun to go. I covered 5 of them. I did not go in 2017. I had planned a trip to Italy and forgot about that. It might be when the College World Series was. That was the team, Chad, that should have won it all. A team that should have won it all. They were 50-6 in the regular season, ranked number 1 in the country, and didn't get there. But what a good spectacle it is. I would recommend anybody that likes baseball and college sports. It would be on somebody's bucket list, I would think.
That's pretty awesome. Kerry, a couple more questions for you. First off, just your thoughts on Rick Carlisle. One-time assistant here in Portland. I was talking with someone earlier, and they were talking about his, versatility or adaptability, where the team that we're seeing right now with the Pacers plays a totally different style than what we saw with Dallas when they won the championship back in 2011. And what are your thoughts on the way he's developed as a coach and the success he continues to have?
I think Rick is a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever. As you know, he was an assistant for P.J. Carlesimo in Portland in the mid-'90s, and I got to know him. I had great respect for him then. I have even better respect for him now. I love the way he can adapt to the game. I think he's made several different adaptations in the type of team he's had, partially because the game's evolved and partially because he's had different type of rosters. What a job he has done with that team this year. They're fun to watch. And also I should mention that Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan, who were the number 1, 2 in the front office at the Blazers in the 2000s. And I have great respect for them, especially Chad Buchanan is just a wonderful guy. So I'm really happy and excited for the Pacers and Rick too.
All right. Last time I had you in studio, you were telling me about your book that you're working on. It's kind of a greatest hits where you're putting together some of your most memorable stories over the course of your long career, and you're going to put them in one book, which is going to be a nice collection to be able to go through. Where are you at in the process, and how are things coming along?
Well, we've got all the stories in the computer, and then now I'm writing, preface and postscript, and I've got about maybe half of those done. So we're probably a month or 6 weeks away. My wife's helping me kind of edit things, and then we'll take it to the printer, the publisher, and by the way, Chad Doing fans will get to read a story that I did with Chad in 2011, and you have a very amazing story life that I told, and it was fun to do, and so that will be one of the stories, and the Chad the Body Doing story.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to see the book, and I was honored to be covered by you. The fact that you want to write about me, I was curious. I was wondering if maybe your experience is like mine sometimes, where I've talked to so many people and I've been doing radio now for so long that sometimes I'll be going through the archives or someone will bring something up and I will have forgotten that I even interviewed or had a chance to do this or talk to that person. When you were going through some of your stories to put together the book, did you come across things that you had forgotten that you'd written about, or you once you read a couple of lines, you're like, oh, I forgot about that. Did you have that experience?
Absolutely. In fact, I have people, somewhat regularly come to me and say, hey, you did a story on me and so, and it was great. Thanks for doing that. And I'll God, I have no memory of that at all.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah, I remember that story. Sure.
Yeah, you have to say that because you don't want to make them feel bad. Yes. But it is funny. Like, think about that over the course of your, how many years, I forgot the exact number. How many years did you work covering sports?
So I was in newspapers for 45 years, from 75 to 2020.
45 years. That's a long time. Think about how many different sports teams and people and all the different conversations. You can't possibly keep track of all that in your mind. That's a long time.
But I'm sure you feel the same way as me. One of the great things about our business, and I consider sportscasting and sports writing similar businesses, that we get to meet some really great people, and of course, fantastic athletes too. And also we meet some really great people that maybe weren't fantastic athletes, but were on a lower level, and we got to do pieces on them and human interest type stuff. I know you do that kind of stuff on your show. So those are the things that are the most rewarding about a career like that.
Yeah, I would agree. People ask me that all the time, and I come up with the same answer that, the people that I've had a chance to meet and talk with or create relationships with, that's the best part about the job. And even, for me, I grew up reading both you and Dwight, and then to be able to do work with you and have you on the show and become friends with you guys over the years, that means a lot to me, because I never would have thought when I was younger that would even be a possibility. And you're right, some of the athletes that you have a chance to talk to, guys that you admire. I think the ones that I enjoy the most are the guys that that are older than me, the athletes that I grew up admiring when I was young, when I get an opportunity to talk to them, those are the conversations that I remember really well because they're the athletes that I grew up admiring as a young fan, as a young boy.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Now you're a grizzled pro. You're in the middle of your career, and you're still learning and still doing a heck of a job, Chad.
Well, Kerry, I appreciate it, buddy. You can check out his website, kerryagers.com. Enjoy the College World Series, my friend. We'll catch up soon, and I can't wait to get a copy of the book when it's done.
Okay, Chad. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You got it. There's Kerry Agers, the Dean of Portland Sports. So everyone we've talked to, Mike Parker, the Godfather Dwight James, I mean, it's pretty obvious that what the Beavers were able to put together and how they were able to, do this, it's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable what they were able to do. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can hit me up on social at Chad and Rip City. I don't know why there's track and field right now on my television. Not the best watch, but man, like right now, it's like if there's not a finals game going on, we have baseball. We're waiting for the College World Series to start. Like we're entering into the slower time of the year for sports. But Shacker, you got to be pretty happy. Your San Francisco Giants are playing well right now.
Yeah, half game out of first. I'm counting down the days to the NFL preseason at this point in the summer.
Dude, I don't know if you've noticed this, but your 49ers have a very favorable schedule. Like a schedule that could set them up very well for success this year.
Do you believe that, or are you just saying that in case they're good because you want them to be bad?
No, I don't.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
No, I don't want them to be bad.
You want to be correct.
Yeah, I do believe that giving big money to Brock Purdy was a mistake. I do. But I'm torn because the 49ers have people within the organization that I'm big fans of. Like I love Kyle Shanahan and I love John Lynch, and I want those guys to do well because I respect them a great deal. Basically, if you're part of the Shanahan family, I will love you. That's just pretty much how that goes because of what Mike did for me. Mike Shanahan is the coach that delivered me back-to-back Super Bowls and experiences I never thought were possible with John Elway. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Big thanks to Kerry Agers. I hadn't spoken with him for a while, so it's great to catch up with him. Big thanks to Sean Hyken and Travis Demers. Rip City Drive, we'll keep things rolling here. Game 4 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow, and we've got the College World Series. Oregon State will kick off their run against Louisville, and you can hear it both on 1190 KEX and 620 Rip City Radio. Pregame at 3, first pitch at 4 on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, here's a tweet from Jason Hassler. Hits me up and says, "Hey, Chad, it's almost time for the summertime Blazers to Seattle stories." Boy, he's not lying about that. I mean, that's like, of all the fears of Trailblazer fans, the Blazers being moved to Seattle is like right up there near the top. I know Sean Hyken told me that that's one of the biggest questions he gets. All I can tell you is that the Blazers are not going to Seattle, that the NBA is not going to allow that to happen. And, the other good news is that Seattle's going to get a team. It's not going to be the Trailblazers, but it will come through expansion. And they'll get the Sonics back, and then we'll have the I-5 rivalry. But I do not believe that the Blazers are going to leave town. I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. And I'm very confident in that, which is good. And the NBA, look, Portland's been a great NBA city. Attendance, tradition. Regionally, it's important for the NBA. Yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere. But Jason's right. The stories are going to fly. And it's a good way to play into Blazer fans' fears, too, to even bring up the idea. But I do not think it's going to happen. I don't think the Blazers are going anywhere. And they've been a very, very good NBA market for years, decades. and you know that. You live here. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. A couple other things I wanted you to hear. Anytime we can hear Bill Belichick talking about his young girlfriend, it's quite nice. Here he is, uncomfortably explaining how she's not a part of the football program. Well, Coach, the noise is coming from the fact that you're dating someone that's like 50 years younger than you are. That might be a source of some of the noise because we're fascinated by that. Well, no. She's not a part of the program. Yeah, of course. And, of course, that's going to happen, Coach. That's one of the creepiest music videos in the history of music videos. Have you seen the original video on that song, Shacker?
The day he died, I saw the video for the first time in my life.
And did he give you creeper vibes?
Yeah. I'm quite sure MTV limited their airings of that video.
Great song. It's one of the all-time great songs. And it's also equally one of the all-time creepiest videos of all time. The opening line is problematic.
Ringo Starr had a song similar.
Yeah, like Sweet 16.
She's 16 in mine.
You're beautiful.
Different times.
All right, Hoodie. Aaron Rodgers had a chance to talk about what the Steelers, what appealed to him about the Pittsburgh Steelers. There you go. Notice he did not mention the Jets as one of the great franchises that he's played for. It is pretty remarkable. He played for the Packers and then the Jets, one of the best franchises to one of the worst. And now he gets a chance to play for the Steelers. Iconic franchise. Mike Tomlin discussed Aaron Rodgers being his quarterback. That's a very Mike Tomlin response. Yeah, I'm not really into the nonsense or the hype. We're just going to roll up our sleeves and go to work. It's very tough. He is a tough head coach. I'm a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I'm anxious to see what Rodgers can do. Is he done? Like, is there anything left in the tank? Is he washed? Or can he recreate some of the magic? I'll be pulling for him. Again, I'm into great quarterback play. I want good quarterbacks in the NFL because I love watching football like you do. And I'm not sure how you feel about this, but when I tune into a game and I see bad quarterback play, I'm pretty much out. I'm done. I can't take it. I don't need that kind of stuff in my life. You don't need that in your life. Bad quarterback play equals bad football. much like the Mariners. Why would you watch the Mariners right now? I'm boycotting them. I can't take it anymore. Just tune into a Dodgers game or a Detroit Tigers game or a San Francisco Giant game. Watch something that's not going to give you incredible pain. Because you know what they're going to do? They're going to rip your heart out. I talked about this earlier in the week. This idea that we have to remain loyal to a team because that was our team when we were young, or we used to live there, or that I used to buy into that nonsense. But as I've gotten older, I realize now that if you're a fan of a team and they continue to punk you and disrespect you and show that they don't care about winning, you don't have to put yourself through that. Drop them, dump them, move on from them. Think about that for a second. If you were in a relationship with somebody and they were crazy and they were up and down and they were ripping your heart out on a regular basis and they showed a total lack of respect for you, you wouldn't be in that relationship anymore. You'd move on. You'd break up. That's the way I see it now. You just break up with the team, move on. Or boycott them and just back away for a bit. And then maybe you can get back into it later in the season once they show that they are not code blue anymore. But when you start dropping, like 16 out of 20, or you drop 11 out of 12 and you don't give run support when you get the good pitching, I don't know. Whatever. It'd be nice to see a winner once in a while. It'd be nice to recapture some of the magic that we had back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Why not just rehire Lou Piniella? Maybe that's the key. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Big reminder of what we got coming up on June 25th. It's going to be a big night, draft night, and the Blazers got their block party rolling out with Draft Edition. And it's going to be over on the Rose Quarter campus, June 25th. And you can come by and enter for your chance to win a Trailblazers prize package, including a Scoot Henderson autographed jersey, 4 Coors Light silver seats to an upcoming Trailblazers game, and a signed Blazers pennant. And we're going to be on air starting at 3, and we're going to cover the entire draft all the way up through the end of round 1 into Joe Cronin's press conference. All right, big thanks to Michael Shacker. Props to Travis Demers, to Sean Eichen, and Kerry Agers. You guys have yourself a wonderful night. We'll have an abbreviated Rip City Drive tomorrow at 3, and then we'll kick it over to the Beavers at 3:30 for Oregon State and Louisville from Omaha for the College World Series.